Welcome back for another session of talking about Seminole Madness, and I'm joined by Warchant.com managing editor Ira Schofel, who's been kind of running this thing for what are we going, a month and a half, 2 months? How long has this Seminole Madness been going?
We talked about doing it right when the pandemic hit. It was like one of the first ideas I think you had, and I didn't realize it was going to take this long. But going through all the matchups, basically we've been doing 4 days a week. We've kind of taken Fridays off for the most part, but yeah, it's been a march. Now we're down to the Final Four. I think people will kind of get a little bit more fired up again.
Yeah, I mean it's really interesting. We are to the Final Four. There's been some really interesting matchups, and for the most part, it's gone chalk. I mean, I went back and looked. It was you either were a number one seed in your semi-bracket or a number two seed in the last two rounds. So, I mean, it's really gone as we expect in the Final Four, all number one seeds. So not a big surprise. But let's go over some of the stuff that kind of happened so far. The winner of the Seminole Legends bracket, not a huge surprise here. Ron Simmons defeated Fred Biletnikoff. It was about a 2-1 voting margin. I don't think that's a big surprise, is it? Simmons ended up being the all-time.
No, I wondered if it would be a little bit closer. I mean, it was relatively close. But yeah, I mean, actually, there were a lot of people pushing on the message boards, kind of for Ron Sellers over Biletnikoff, which made for some interesting debates. But yeah, once he got past, it probably didn't matter. And a lot of these things there were like fierce debates on the message boards about who was going to win or a particular matchup. But as you said, like that would just set them up for the next round where they get to go against a 1 seed or 2 seed, and it probably wouldn't matter.
Yeah, I think Ron Simmons kind of had that. That's why we had him as the number 1 seed. We kind of figured he would be, and he rightfully so. Wins out the Seminole Legends bracket. We'll see later if he can advance past the Final Four. Might have a tall order there, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Not a surprise, winner of special teams, Sebastian Janikowski. I really think it was him and Aguayo was really kind of the battle before that. And once he advanced past Aguayo, took on Greg Reed, won that rather handily.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Sebastian was an interesting one with especially with Aguayo, because Aguayo's numbers are impossible to argue with. I mean, his numbers are better than anybody's. I think the thing that swayed some people with Sebastian was just how impressive his length strength was, and also that time frame. At that time period, you didn't have kickers that were just automatic the way they are now. It's that position really has kind of evolved to the point where guys don't miss. So I think there were definitely people arguing for Aguayo based on the numbers. He's got much better numbers consistency-wise, but Sebastian pulled away as we expected.
But I think it's part of that too. Maybe the NFL success. You had Janikowski was a long time. I don't know if he's even officially retired yet. He was with the Raiders forever. Was great. And then in a year, Roberto flamed out in the NFL and never made it there. So I wonder if that's still kind of fresh in people's minds too.
100%. And that was the thing. We didn't when we did this, we never really told people you have to go by FSU success. Some people made their votes accordingly. They felt like FSU success was more important. I think a lot of people took both into account. And you're right, yeah, 100%. I mean, if Aguayo was still kicking in the league, had a starting job every year and was doing really well, maybe that would have made it closer. But you're right, Sebastian, 19 years in the NFL. I mean, it's kind of amazing.
Yeah, so that's and then Ron Simmons defeated Janikowski to advance to the Final Four again. Not a surprise there, really. So, like I said, he will have a tougher matchup there. But let's move ahead, Ira, to the offensive playmaker bracket. And I guess, again, the surprise me here is that what happened last week was we knew this one was headed down. Charlie Ward versus Jameis Winston, 2 Titans going at it, both national champions, similar records, both won national championships, both won Heismans. I really thought this was a coin flip, and I was really shocked that Charlie Ward won by over 72% of the vote, especially when you throw in the recency bias. It's really surprising to me.
Yeah, it is. And, I know Corey and Aslan talked about it the other day on Wake Up Warchant. And, it made me kind of go back and think about it as well. We're allowed to vote, and I voted for Charlie. But what's interesting about that is at the time when Jameis was playing, I really felt like I don't know if I'd ever seen another quarterback play like that before. The way Jameis did. I mean, he was so unbelievable. And he did it really for 2 years. I mean, the second year he had, some rough patches. He threw a lot of interceptions, but he also had all those second half rallies and just seemed like he was just a unstoppable force to some degree. And I don't know if you felt that way all the time with Charlie, especially because early in his career, they didn't have the offense, the fast break offense. But I think looking back on it, I think the reason I picked Charlie is I just think because he was the first Heisman winner, the first guy to win a national title, the fact that he didn't we never got to see his warts in the NFL. Jameis has had a up and down patch in the NFL. We'll see if he can turn it around long term. But I wasn't shocked to see Charlie win, but the margin, was definitely surprising.
Yeah, that's I think you're probably right. It's probably a nostalgia factor too. You're right with Charlie being the first Heisman winner, first national championship. I just think some of, especially probably our demographic on the board, are very nostalgic about what happened back then. And you wonder maybe some of the off the field warts with Jameis maybe played into that as well.
You definitely.
Either way, not a surprise. Just the margin I really thought it would be closer.
Yeah, and that's a good point. We actually reading some of the votes, some of the members who made their arguments. It came up a few times that however you feel about Jameis, it's everybody's very polarizing. There's different people who love him and people who have problems with him. No matter how you feel about him, everybody loves Charlie, and there's nothing to knock about his character. And I think for some people in a tiebreaker, I think that did push him.
Yeah, that might have been it. All right, let's move over to the linemen, the offensive linemen and defensive linemen. Both number one seeds won, both for the offense and the defensive linemen. The one that was kind of interesting, that was the closest one of all these battles we've had in the last couple of weeks, was Walter Jones against Rodney Hudson. And I went back and forth on this one. I got to admit, I actually did vote for Rodney Hudson. And what I looked at for my overriding factor was just the fact he'd played for several years. He made this crotchety veteran Marine cry. And you make Rick Trickett cry, you're going to get my vote. Now, I know Walter Jones edged him out 54.3% to 45.7%. So it was really down to the wire with these two guys. I'm not surprised that Walter Jones won. He's an NFL Hall of Fame member. I think here's an instance where I think the NFL, even though Rodney's done great in the NFL, but I mean, Walter Jones is Walter Jones. Some people say the best tackle of all time in the NFL. I think that played a heavy hand in him winning this. Yeah,
I'd say this. I think Walter Jones is probably the most polarizing, certainly the most polarizing one seed, and maybe the most polarizing player overall. Because a lot of people did feel like, what you did at FSU should carry more weight than anything else. And he was only played for 1 year. He got redshirted his first year out of junior college. And so I get that, but his pro success was so overwhelming. Yeah. And the fact that he's kind of seen as one of the best, maybe the best offensive tackle of all time. It would have been interesting watching the voting. We had the window was 24 hours and we watched the voting. There was a period of time I thought, man, Rodney Hudson's going to pull off the upset. But ultimately he couldn't do it.
Yeah, so that was a really entertaining one. Now, it's crazy to me in the defense, not who won, and Peter Boulware is the one in the defensive lineman in bracket. But what shocked me is how he ran roughshod over everybody. I mean, more than Deion, more than Charlie, and any of these things. He had over 80% both going up against Andre Wadsworth, who's no slouch. And then when he did take on Walter Jones for the overall lineman, I mean, both were just complete blowouts. Was that a little bit shocking to you, Ira?
Yeah, it was. The Wadsworth one, you and I talked a little bit before about it. That one was probably the most shocking. The Walter Jones thing, I think by the time Walter Jones had beat Rodney Hudson, I feel like there was a groundswell of people who were kind of like getting frustrated that Walter Jones was doing so well, the fact that he only played 1 year. And I think there was some anti-Walter Jones sentiment going into the last round and going into that round. But, Boulware beating Wadsworth, the way he did, it was definitely shocking. I mean, their numbers – are so similar. Wadsworth numbers in some areas are so much better. It's hard to I think it's one of those things when you watch them play, though, Boulware was so explosive, so dynamic, had so many just flash spectacular plays that maybe that's what carried the day. But, he was so dominant in those rounds, it makes you wonder if he could pull off an upset in the semifinals.
I don't know. I'll take that bet. I don't think that happens. We'll talk about here in a minute who he's going to match up with. But the last bracket we had was, man, a couple of Titans going at it, man. It almost seems it's crazy to me, the defensive guys. So first you had – I'm going to go back first on one of my favorite matchups, and I was pleasantly surprised, not that I'm both great players, but when Derek Brooks played Marvin Jones before the finals here in that bracket. But the two of them, it was very close as you suspected, but, Marvin won out the thing. And again, I think when you look, especially when you look at the college career, I think you have to put Marvin ahead of Derek again. But if you look at the NFL, you put Derek ahead of Marvin. So I think that the fans, I read the arguments, are very good, but I think most of them put that heavy weight, as they probably should, on college performance.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, Marvin was so good. And the fact that you had them, you could compare them because they played at the same time frame. They were teammates. I think people remembered Marvin as the dominant player. So I think that helped him If they had been maybe 10 years apart, maybe the NFL success pushes Derek Brooks over the top. But yeah, that was I think they made the right call, especially talking about from a Florida State standpoint. Derek obviously had the much longer and better NFL career.
Still got to wonder if Marvin hangs out one more year for that 1993 national championship season. If he's as dominant or more dominant than he had been, I mean, maybe he's in the Heisman running. Who knows? He might be right up there with who we're going to be talking about here in a minute. And that's the player that defeated Marvin to get to the Final Four, and that's Deion Sanders, who none of us are surprised that he came out on top of the defensive playmakers, considering, he's the career he had at Florida State, obviously unbelievable, and in the NFL, most still regard him as the best cover corner in NFL history. And obviously the fact that he's still all the time as a personality on NFL Network, I think that does a lot for his gravitas as well.
Yeah, and there's no question. And, I think that, as we get further away, I think people sometimes, our memories might get a little bit fuzzy about how dominant he was and how he kind of revolutionized the way people looked at corners. I mean, back then, corners were not marquee players. I mean, they weren't seen as, superstars the way he was, the way he marketed himself, the way he played the position, how aggressive he was. And, he kind of revolutionized that position. And then when you add into it the way he played in the NFL, it's kind of like he had Walter Jones success in the NFL, but he also got to play his full career at Florida State, which is kind of what puts him on that pantheon, really where he stands out. I mean, right now, if you were, and we'll get into the matchups, I mean, he might be the odds-on favorite right now to win it all.
So, yeah, of course, he advanced. He did, take out Marvin Jones there to advance to the Final Four. So now we have gone through it all. We have our official Final Four matchups, and we got Charlie Ward taking on Peter Boulware. Now, like you said, Peter Boulware has just been crushing everybody across the board, but I don't think he's faced anybody like Charlie Ward right now. The fact that Charlie defeated Jameis Winston rather handily really tells me he's got to be the heavy favorite here.
Yeah, I mean, he is. But I was just kind of curious as I was looking at those numbers. I was like, man, people really love Peter Boulware. But no, you would expect that's going to be the case. I mean, I think Charlie is so beloved. I mean, the only thing, Charlie doesn't have is the NFL career, but it's not like he went and failed, so I don't know. I don't think people hold that against him. He went and played another sport. He was a first-round pick
successful in the NBA
and had a long NBA career over a decade. So you don't have that knock on him. Usually if somebody didn't do much in the NFL, there's a little bit of tarnish there, but he just chose a different path. So yeah, my guess is Charlie's gonna. Do you think it'll be a complete blowout though, or do you think Boulware will get some votes?
I think it's going to be about a 2-1. Maybe not 80-90%, but 70% around there would be if I had to throw a bet on it right now. I'd say about 70% advantage.
Yeah, I could see that.
And then the other one, Deion Primetime, is taking on old school winner of the Legends bracket, Ron Simmons. So, I think there's definitely, and Bobby Bowden said it, we had Bobby Butler on, the most important recruit in Bobby Bowden's history. Maybe the whole program doesn't happen if not for Ron Simmons. He kind of set the stage for everything. So I think there's definitely a little bit of a love affair for him. Deion's Deion. I think Deion wins, but I think you're going to get a little bit of a groundswell for Ron Simmons to make a little bit of a run in this.
Yeah, it's funny watching the comments, and Ron Simmons is one of those just the generations see him completely different. The younger people, because he didn't have the same kind of NFL career, they know him as a pro wrestler.
Yeah.
They know the success he had in the WWE, which kind of makes him look less, I guess less of the same stature of an NFL greatness. So I think that diminishes that a little bit. But the old timers, the people of our age or older who, remember him as a force, they're like, there's never been anything like Ron Simmons. I mean, he just was completely changed the way offensive lines had to block because he was so dominant. He was literally unblockable for one player. So I think you'll see some people in our age or older maybe voting for him. The younger people, I mean, I just think they're all going to vote the other way.
Yeah, when you get a chance later this week, we're going to have the Warchant that we had with Bobby Butler talking about the 1980 Pitt game. And I guess he came in together with Ron Simmons when they first got there. And he was going to tell us to look forward to a really interesting story about the first time he met Ron Simmons, just how blown away he was at this guy, this mammoth chiseled dude was a freshman when he came in. So look
Well,
forward to
you
that.
look,
Bobby's got some really good stories to tell us about that coming up later.
I'll look forward to watching that. I think we'll put that up on the site on Wednesday. But you look at some of the interception numbers. No offense to our guys Keith Jones and Monk Bonasort and some guys like that. I'm going to assume that some of the pressure up the middle was probably
yes, and he said that. Bobby said how great that was for all those defensive backs to have Ron Simmons blowing up the interior all the time. That was great for them. So so we're setting up. We think there's two pretty relatively heavy favorites in the Final Four, but it is setting up. If it goes as we expect, Ira, it is going to set up for a mammoth finals. Deion Sanders against Charlie Ward. I don't know how I'm going to vote. I don't know if I can even make a prediction on that. I just don't know how the fans are going to vote.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I've started to feel like just watching those discussions and the fact that people are giving credit for the intangibles. I think on one side you say Charlie's going to get the intangibles from the fact that he's so beloved, just like Warwick Dunn did.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at Warwick's some of the voting in his, people were like, they love Warwick Dunn so much as a human being that that pushed him to some really high vote totals. Along with his obviously incredible talent. Charlie's going to get that bump as well. Where Deion gets the big bump, obviously, is what he did in the NFL and the fact that that longevity. And so I don't know. I mean, I think usually one person or the other kind of has that intangible that pushes it over, but they both have it. I think it's going to come down to some people's just who their favorite player was, and who they identified with. The fact that Deion's a little bit more polarizing maybe might take some away. It's fascinating. I mean, you could probably talk yourself into circles trying to figure out exactly how that would play out. Assuming that's who meets, this is why we play the games, Gene. They actually have to that we have to have the vote. But if that plays out, I mean, it could be fascinating. We had one early on. I mean, if people remember, early on in the contest, we had a vote that was decided by one vote. Mm-hmm. So this wouldn't be the first time if that happened. Maybe we'll have the first dead heat.
Well, we'd have to extend. I'd say we might want to extend that. We usually do 24 hours. I think we can at least do 48, right, for that one. I heard about.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So let's do that on that one, assuming, again, it plays out that way. But, the one thing, if I had to handicap this thing, the thing that still jumps out of me is how Charlie Ward trounced Jameis Winston. That was maybe the biggest shock to me in all of this, and the fact that he got that many votes over the last guy that won the national championship, that won the Heisman, still in the NFL, tells me there is a lot of love affair for Charlie Ward. So I don't know. I mean, if nothing would surprise me in this, but I'm saying I'm giving 51% Charlie at this point.
I wouldn't argue against you. That it's gonna be fun. Again, we'll see if they get there, but assuming they do, I couldn't argue either way. Earlier I was thinking maybe Deion gets it just because of all the success he had in the NFL, but I do think with Charlie, his character and the way he's so beloved, probably negates that. So, yeah, it's pretty close to 50-50, I bet.
So, Ira, the schedule this week, you can get this today. This video should be airing Monday. And so what's the schedule going to be like for those people who want to come in and vote on the Tribal Council?
Yeah, so we'll have this up. You can vote on this Monday. It'll go for 24 hours. And then we'll run the finals on Wednesday. We'll put the finals up probably maybe late morning Wednesday, some point Wednesday morning. And then we'll announce the winner of the Seminole Madness Warchant Bracket Challenge, the greatest FSU football player of all time, on Friday.
So get in there, get your votes on the Tribal Council all this week, and vote for him. And the best poster who makes the best argument, we'll throw you out a $25 e-card to Garnet and Gold. And if you're not a subscriber, you're seeing this video, you got to get on Warchant. You got to be a subscriber to be able to vote. So do that Warchant 30, free 30 days. Give it a shot. We're hoping soon we'll be able to report on football here, Ira, if things go well. Cross our fingers. Hopefully everybody gets healthy. This virus goes away in a month or two. We're knee-deep talking about football. It'd be great if that could happen. Thank you so much, Ira. Look forward to Seminole Madness this week.
Thanks, Shane. We'll talk soon.